After that, you wrestled for TNA for a while, and you shared the ring with the likes of, at that point, Ron Killings, now R-Truth, BG James, now Road Dogg, Disco Inferno, among many others. But at one point, as far as we read the reports, you received a contractual offer from Total Nonstop Action Wrestling, and you decided not to sign with them. There are two questions in this topic. How was your experience with, the original version of TNA, and why did you decide not to sign with them?
The original version of TNA was wild.
It was.
It was crazy. It was the Nashville Fairgrounds. Legends, of old and new stars all kind of together at once. A lot of it was really bad. It wasn't very good wrestling, but a lot of it was very, very good. For me, my goal in TNA, I never thought that WWE was even a possibility for me. Never in my life until they called me and offered me a contract. What I wanted to do was join the TNA X division with all of the smaller wrestlers that were flying all around and had a huge influence, as you know, by the Lucha Libre culture from Mexico. And I wanted to be a part of that. But once the word got out, and the idea of there being a one-legged wrestler, which I didn't think was a very big deal, but the wrestling community had never seen that before. So it was very unique. Right. And so I almost went viral before there was even a viral, just by word of mouth. Like, oh, have you heard about the one-legged guy? Yeah, I heard he can jump off the top rope and do backflips. I heard he's a great wrestler. All this stuff, the rumors started spreading. And before I knew it, WWE was calling my phone, offering me a contract. And at that point, I'm like, of course the answer is yes. Like, if WWE calls anybody and offers them a contract, especially if you're a 19-year-old kid who just started wrestling, the answer is going to be yes.
So I'm going to translate that to Spanish. En aquel momento dado, Zach Gowen llega a TNA, a la versión antigua que describe como alocada y buena. Y su meta en el momento era la División X, influenciado por lo que vio en la cultura de la lucha libre, entre muchísimas otras cosas, porque en aquel momento dado para él, WWE, él pensaba que no era una posibilidad. Sin embargo, Zach Gowen se hizo viral sin haber existido el término viral, simplemente de palabra en palabra. He escuchado de este muchacho, no tiene una pierna, él puede hacer los backflips, puede hacer diferentes tipos de movidas, con una sola pierna se trepa a la tercera cuerda, y ese rumor llega a WWE. ¿Y por qué motivo Zach Gowen no firma un contrato a tiempo completo con TNA? Porque alguien lo llama y le dice, te queremos en WWE, y eso, el resto fue historia. Then you were the first one-leg competitor in the history of this version of what they know WWE, the big mecca of pro wrestling or sports entertainment. How do you felt achieving that dream? I mean, once you put the pen on the paper and it was a sure deal, how do you feel for you, for your family, for the people who have faced this kind of struggles day in and day out?
I felt overwhelmed. Listen, I got into wrestling because I love wrestling. I was so naive that I didn't, and ignorant and immature, that I didn't understand the power that my story had. It wasn't until I started getting those reactions from the WWE universe that I realized that they weren't cheering for me because I was a good wrestler. They were cheering for me because they connected with my story. And that's when I understood the power of my story. But it wasn't until later on in my WWE career, and more so after WWE, that I realized the gravity of the moment of me being the first one-legged wrestler, somebody who faced physical challenges, handicaps, barriers, obstacles, the ability to overcome them, why that was so important to the WWE fan base. And it's something that I'm most proud of. One of the things in my life that I'm most proud of is the fact that I got to be showcased on that platform and inspire millions of people.
I'm gonna translate that to Spanish. ¿Cómo se sintió cuando puso ese bolígrafo encima del papel? Abrumador, fue una experiencia grande. Él no entendía, obviamente era un muchacho de 19 años, joven, buscando cumplir su sueño. Él no entendía el poder detrás de su historia hasta que llega a WWE y entiende el respaldo de la gente, tal vez no porque era el luchador más grande del mundo, sino por la experiencia que tuvo él y las vivencias que él tenía de estas discapacidades, que tal vez para muchos son discapacidades, que él utilizó como su fortaleza, y el resto es historia. Your first gig in WWE, I'm gonna curse at this one. Holy shit, Mr. America and Rowdy Piper. That was Zach Gowen's first gig in WWE. How do you felt, man, working with highly probable till this day the biggest superstar in the history of WWF, obviously besides The Rock and his success outside of the industry, but inside the industry, there was no one better than Hulk Hogan or Mr. America or whoever they want to call it, and Rowdy Piper, one of the biggest heels of all times. How do you feel working with them? How was that experience for you?
Man, it was stupid. That's how it felt. Excuse me. I was so blown away because the storyline that I presented to WWE the week before with the writers was, hey, I want to come in kind of under the radar, right? A low profile where we acknowledge the fact that I have one leg, but we don't really we don't make it a big deal. It's more about the wrestling and to replicate an angle like the 1-2-3 Kid did back in 1994 or 1993, when he lost every week and he got a little bit closer, and then one week he pinned Razor Ramon, and that was just a star is born, so to speak. That was what I understood the angle was going to be. Yet I show up to the arena and Bruce Pritchard pulls me aside and says, "Hey, listen, Zach, you're going to debut tonight. However, it's going to be with Hulk Hogan. It's going to be with Roddy Piper, and we're going to put you in an angle with Vince McMahon, the CEO of WWE." And so at that point, you just say, "Fuck it, let's do it, man." You know?
Gonna translate that to Spanish. Una semana antes, 1 week prior, Zach Gowen entrega una historia propuesta de este underdog que sí se sabía que tenía una pierna, pero no iba a ser el centro de la historia, sino que perdía y que cada vez estaba más cerca de la victoria, como 1-2-3 Kid en su momento dado. Y Bruce Pritchard lo saca a un lado un viernes y le dice, ok, no un viernes, no un día de SmackDown, y le dice, ok, vas a debutar hoy. Oh, pues excelente, ¿cómo? Vas a debutar con Hulk Hogan y Roddy Piper en una historia con Vince McMahon. Y él dice como que, ok, pues fuck it, vamos a hacerlo porque no hay otro remedio. During your stay with WWF, or in WWE at that point, you wrestle Vincent Kennedy McMahon on Vengeance 2003, 14+ minute match. Holy shit. Did you ever imagine that you were going to be on a pay-per-view in the co-main event against the highly probable, at that point, the most hated man in the universe, your boss, Vincent Kennedy McMahon?
No, of course not. It was never a dream or a goal. Like, you can't make this up. Yet I found myself living this life every single day, going on the road, doing press, right? Being interviewed for magazines and newspapers. And I'm talking about a feud with Vince McMahon, with Hulk Hogan and Roddy Piper. It was a dream. It really felt like a dream. And looking back, I'm so beyond grateful that I'm one of the very few WWE superstars to ever wrestle Vince McMahon on pay-per-view one-on-one. There's Shawn Michaels, Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, The Undertaker, Shane McMahon, and maybe a handful of others. And then there's me, Zach Gowen, which is crazy because he's a 53, at the time, he was like, 55-year-old non-wrestler. And then me, I've only been wrestling for a year. And they had enough faith in our ability to put on a good match that they put it as the co-main event, and they put a bunch of hype around it. And to me, it was incredible. And it really, honestly, it felt like a dream. You wake up in the morning and you kind of think about the dream that you had the night before, where you're like, oh, that was really, really weird. And for me, it was weird, but it was very, very real at the same time.
I'm gonna translate that to Spanish. En aquel momento dado, muy pocas personas habían tenido la oportunidad de estar 1-1 junto a Vince McMahon en un pay-per-view. Tenías a The Rock, tenías a Austin, tenías tal vez a Shawn Michaels, y de repente tenías a Zach Gowen enfrentándose 1-1 a Vincent Kennedy McMahon en Vengeance en el año 2003 en un pay-per-view. Lucha coestelar, 14 minutos de lucha, simplemente una oportunidad increíble. Y dice que en algún momento dado parecía todo un sueño, it looked like just a dream, pero no era un sueño, era una oportunidad hecha realidad y simplemente está eternamente agradecido por eso.